Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. It was a chilly November evening in the small town of Eldridge Hollow, nestled between the thick woods of Indiana. The sky was an inky blue, a stark contrast to the vibrant autumn leaves that clung desperately to the branches of aged oak trees. The fading daylight whispered the promise of darkness, a harbinger of secrets about to surface. At the center of this quiet town stood a modest two-story house, painted in soft shades of cream, its front porch wrapped in a warm glow from the single lamp that flickered above. Inside, beneath the muffled sounds of a crackling fire, the Brown family prepared for what should have been a routine Sunday dinner. Margaret Brown, a dedicated mother, stirred a pot of hearty stew, while her son, Tommy, arranged the table with mismatched dinnerware. Each clattering dish seemed to echo with anticipation. But there was one member missing from this scene: Sarah, the youngest daughter. 12 years old, with a wild mane of curly hair and a penchant for adventure. Sarah had asked for a moment of solitude in the nearby woods. This request was not unusual. The woods were her escape, her sanctuary. Yet as the darkness crept closer, the family began to feel the tightening grip of unease, their laughter punctured by the realization that Sarah had not returned. "Just give her a few more minutes," Margaret reassured her husband, Tom, who stood at the threshold, glancing nervously down the dirt path that led into the trees. "She's just outside." But the seconds faded into minutes, and the weight of silence settled heavy in the air. The victim. Monday dawned gray and foreboding, the mist casting a veil over Eldridge Hollow as the sun struggled to pierce through. In the Brown household, the air was heavy with a sense of dread. The breakfast table lay untouched, plates still scattered with the remnants of a meal meant for 4. Tommy sat staring blankly at his cereal, uneaten, while Margaret hovered near the door, her gaze fixated on the driveway as if willed footsteps would emerge from the shadows. As the clock struck 8, the local police were summoned. Officer Daniels, a seasoned patrolman with the department for over a decade, arrived to assess the situation. He observed the frantic gestures of Margaret and the vacant stare of her young son, piecing together fragments of the last known sighting. "Last night, she was just playing in the woods," he confirmed, his pen poised above his notebook, trying to remain composed under the mounting tension. "Yes," Margaret replied, her voice quivering. "She always plays there. She was just exploring, I thought. But she never came back." The callous chill of reality began to surface as they ventured down the path Sarah had taken. A small cluster of anxious neighbors gathered near the Brown home, whispers of speculation filling the air as news rippled through the quiet community. "Do you really think she'd wander off?" a neighbor mused, her brow furrowed. The growing concern intensified in the air, mingling with the mist. As Officer Daniels approached the tree line, he felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Instinct told him this was no ordinary search. He knew the woods, familiar with its winding trails and secrets often buried beneath the roots. Yet, it wasn't the landscape that unsettled him. It was the palpable silence that had fallen, thicker than the fog. A vibrant life, full of dreams and laughter, was now lost within those dark shadows, waiting to be found. The crime scene. The further Officer Daniels ventured into the woods, the more the atmosphere shifted from tranquil beauty to an unsettling stillness. Twisted branches arched overhead like gnarled fingers, and the damp earth beneath his worn boots felt strangely unwelcoming, heavy with the weight of unspoken stories. As he worked his way deeper, the distant sounds of frantic calls from the Brown family, combined with the murmurs of growing concern among the townspeople, faded into nothingness. A chill coursed through him when he spotted something unusual, a hastily abandoned backpack, perched precariously on a low branch. Its vibrant blue fabric stood out against the muted greens and browns surrounding it. Memories of Sarah's beaming face flickered through his mind. He approached cautiously, heart pounding in his chest. This was no longer a game. Hide and seek. Something was Something was With careful hands, he opened the backpack. Inside lay her favorite pink water bottle, a half-eaten granola bar, and a small leather-bound diary. As he flipped through the pages, illustrations of woodland creatures danced alongside her diligent penmanship. Each scribbled note revealed a glimpse into her adventurous spirit, capturing mundane moments, the thrill of spotting a deer, her fascination with the changing seasons. But one page seemed different, filled with hurried, uneven line. It read, "I found a new trail, but it's kind of scary." Officer Daniels felt the hair prickling on the back of his neck. Pushing deeper into the woods, he was met with an eerie silence that pressed against him, thick and soft. Each step felt deliberate, cautious. Suddenly, a flash of color caught his eye in the underbrush, something incongruous amid the muted forest. He knelt down, stomach twisting at the revelation. It was a child's jacket pink, just like the one Sarah had worn the day before, torn and smeared with dark, sticky stains. The sight prickled his skin and raw adrenaline surged through him. This was no ordinary search. The woods were no longer an escape, but a trap, concealing secrets that begged to be unveiled. Time was slipping away, but with it came the urgency that sparked a wildfire of dread in his mind. Sarah was out there, and the forest was holding its breath. The early investigation. The sun began its slow ascent, casting a pale glow over the treetops, but the warmth it promised remained elusive. The scene in Eldridge Hollow was transforming into a somber tableau as news of Sarah's disappearance rippled through the town. By the time Officer Daniels reported his discoveries back to the station, a command center had been hastily set up at the Brown home. Detective Helen Harper, a shrewd investigator known for her meticulous nature, arrived on the scene, her sharp instincts finely tuned to the unsettling atmosphere. She recognized the weight of this case. Children went missing, but tragedies often tinged with darkness spiraled towards worse ends, leaving scarred families in their wake. "Have you established a timeline since her disappearance?" she asked, surveying the worried faces of the Brown family as they gathered in the living room, seeking comfort in each other's presence. Margaret clasped her hands, shaking her head. "She went out around 4. We thought she was just exploring." The guilt laced her voice, a parent's remorse pulling tightly at her heart. Detective Harper nodded, her brow furrowed with concentration. "We need to trace her movements. Did she have any friends in the area? Anyone she might have been with?" Tom, Sarah's father, stepped forward, his brow glistening with sweat. "She often played with a girl named Lucy, but she didn't see her yesterday." Detective Harper's mind began to race. A solid lead was critical, but it was the coat and diary that loomed large in her thoughts. Fresh faces joined the command, a handful of volunteers and officers. canvassing the area. Search teams were dispatched into the wilderness, fanning out in concentric circles. The forest, once a safe haven, now felt hostile, brimming with unseen dangers. As the sun dipped lower, shadows grew longer, and the urgency of the investigation shifted into high gear. With every tick of the clock, pieces of Sarah's whereabouts gathered like a puzzle waiting to be solved. With determination, Detective Harper resolved that daylight would not slip away without answers. Not today. Not when a child was lost. The clock was ticking. The woods echoed with lies waiting to be uncovered. The dead ends. The search for Sarah Brown progressed quickly, but yielded little. Hours turned to days, each mingling with the sense of dread that permeated the air, its weight pressing down on the shoulders of Eldridge Hollow. Detective Harper, sitting in her cramped office, combed through her notes, retracing the timeline meticulously, hoping to unravel the mystery. Each detail felt important, every piece of information hinting at a deeper truth buried just beneath the surface. The list of potential leads thinned, while the community's hope began to falter. Officer Daniels had reached out to Sarah's friends, but Lucy and others claimed they hadn't seen her. The nights grew longer, plagued with speculation and sleepless anxiety. Did she wander too far? Had something sinister taken her? The questions gnawed relentlessly at Detective Harper's resolve. One afternoon, she sat across the table from Margaret Brown, whose eyes were red-rimmed and haunted, fatigue clinging to her like a second skin. What if she met someone in the woods? Margaret whispered, her voice cracking. Someone she thought she could trust. Harper leaned forward, her mind racing. Do you remember if Sarah ever mentioned any unusual encounters on her walks? Anyone who might have been around? Margaret shook her head. No. She was always excited, never scared. We thought we could trust the woods. Outside, rumors spread like wildfire whispers of a transient who had been spotted near the town. Tales of an unsolved case from years prior. Detective Harper directed her team to follow leads concerning the transient, exploring old files that weren't well documented, searching forlorn records of missing children and strange happenings. But each door they knocked on led to a dead end. Conversations drifted like smoke in the wind. Every witness recounted sightings that failed to hold water. Any potential sightings of Sarah waned as quickly as they emerged, like leaves falling from trees in the autumn, pellucid one moment, gone the next. Frustration mounted. With darkness looming over the investigation, the town held its breath in uncertainty. The sun would rise again, casting light on their fears. But for now, it felt as if the whole town was swallowed by shadows. Detective Harper resolved that despair was not an option. Every bit of her instinct screamed that Sarah was still out there. They just needed to find the small cracks within the dark facade of the forest that might lead them home. A break in the case. A chilly wind whispered through the trees as dawn broke over Eldridge Hollow, casting long shadows that danced across the soil of the forest floor. Detective Harper leaned against her vehicle, sipping from a lukewarm cup of coffee, its bitterness matching her dampening spirits. Days had turned into a blur searching, questioning, chasing leads that dwindled as quickly as they appeared. But then, fate shifted ever so slightly. Just as the sun began to peek through the clouds, Officer Daniels approached with a determined expression, the sheen of excitement barely contained. "We've got something," he said, his voice steady but urgent. Harper felt a flicker of hope light within her chest. "What is it?" Daniels nodded toward a group of local volunteers gathered at the edge of the woods. A pair of hikers found a small trail. At the end, they discovered a set of footprints. They're small, definitely a child's size, leading off the main path. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, Harper followed Daniels to the site. The volunteers were already marking the trail, their anticipation palpable. Clearing her mind, she focused on the footfalls engraved in the soft earth, the patterns uniquely identifiable. These were not stray impressions. They were deliberate, moving away from the main path that Sarah routinely took. "We contacted the hikers to get their descriptions," Daniels added, "and they mentioned hearing a child's laughter coming from up ahead, but they thought little of it at the time." Together they stepped into the thicket, pushing through low-hanging branches and slips of brush. Only moments later, a sudden clearing opened before them. Worn wooden beams outlined what appeared to be the remnants of an old structure, perhaps a forgotten hunting cabin. The air was different, heretic, with an unrealized weight. Determined, Harper approached with caution. The footsteps led straight to the dilapidated door, slightly ajar, creaking as the wind played a haunting melody. "Stand back," she instructed, her voice firm. With a subtle push, the door swung open with an ominous groan, revealing darkness within. But it was the sudden gasp from a nearby volunteer that broke through the tension. "Over here," she shouted, pointing inside. As Harper stepped into the room, her heart raced with fear and anticipation. Among the dust and faded shadows, something lay on the floor, a child's pink hair tie. Unmistakably familiar. The desperate hope that had flickered to life was now a roaring inferno. They were on the right path. But what awaited them next stirred a gnawing apprehension that hung in the air like a promise yet to be fulfilled. The suspect. As evening settled over Eldridge Hollow, Officer Daniels secured the perimeter around the abandoned cabin, marking it as a crime scene. Detective Harper felt her heart hammer against her ribs as she knelt to inspect the room, forcing her mind to focus despite the overwhelming anxiety that clawed at her. The sight of the pink hair tie had reignited her determination, but it also raised unsettling questions. Who had been here? And where was Sarah? "We should call in forensics," Harper said, glancing towards a nearby officer. "And let's canvass the area for any local sightings." Hours ticked by as the dimming light faded into twilight, washing the cabin in an eerie glow. They began to comb through the structure, searching for any signs of life or clues. Everything felt critical. Just as Harper turned to resume her investigation, a sharp voice broke through her concentration. "Detective!" It was Officer Daniels, breathless as he approached, a folder clutched tightly under his arm. "You need to see this." Harper reached for the file, flipping it open to reveal a small set of mugshots, all men, each listing prior offenses. Her eyes narrowed on one photograph in particular. The name at the top read Daniel Hargrove, a man with a troubled history, including a long-standing arrest record related to offenses against minors. He had slipped through the cracks of the justice system, an unsettling truth that sent shivers down her spine. "What do we know about him?" she asked, urgency lacing her tone. Daniels flipped through the page. "Neighbors claim he's reclusive, doesn't keep to himself. And yet Fish was reportedly seen in the woods just days before Sarah disappeared. right near where we found her hair tie. Harper felt her blood run cold, an unfurling knot of recognition. That's why the whispers never left. There were rumors about him hanging around recently. She directed her team to locate Hargrove immediately, knowing the clock was ticking down further. They needed to secure him before the shadows enveloped any possibility of finding Sarah alive. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, Harper gathered her thoughts as they mobilized for the confrontation ahead. They had unearthed a chilling link to a man shrouded in darkness, a man whose actions could illuminate their path or plunge them further into despair. As the team prepared to move, a rush of hope and fear surged through her. They might finally seize a chance to uncover the truth, but what they might find lurking within that confrontation was far from certain. The trial, months had suffocated the once vibrant spirit of Eldridge Hollow, transforming the town into a shadow of its former self. The disappearance of Sarah Brown had morphed from a tragic mystery into a harrowing reality. Days stretched into endless searches, whispered rumors, and a tightening grip of fear that threaded through the community. Now, as the trial for Daniel Hargrove loomed, an air of expectation mingled with palpable tension. The courtroom buzzed with hushed conversations, a sea of faces painted with grief and anger. Margaret and Tom Brown sat in the front row, hands clasped tight, knuckles white against the fabric of their clothes. The last remnants of hope flickered within them, sparks shadowed by bitterness and questions that had no answers. As the judge entered and silence enveloped the room, Detective Harper took a moment to reflect on the path that had led them here. The evidence had painted a grim picture. DNA on the hair tie, surveillance footage capturing Hargrove near the forest, inconsistencies in his alluvial woven tightly into the prosecution's narrative. Yet to stare into the eyes of an accused man, knowing the lives forever altered by his actions, felt like standing on the edge of a precipice. The trial began with chilling testimonies. The prosecution recounted Sarah's laughter, her innocence the last echo of a girl full of dreams. Margaret's voice trembled as she spoke of her daughter. She was my light, and now it feels like there's only darkness. Each word hung heavy in the air, weighing on the collective conscience of everyone present. When it was the defense's turn, they spun tales of reasonable doubt, of past grievances and misinterpretation. Hargrove's attorney painted a picture of an eccentric man who posed no threat to children, attempting to unravel the threads of the prosecution's tightly knit case. As each argument unfurled, it became clear this was more than just a battle for justice. It was a reckoning. As the jury departed to deliberate, a thick silence fell over the courtroom. Each heartbeat drummed a haunting melody of anxiety, tempo in sync with the turmoil within the families of victims and onlookers. When the jury finally returned, breath hitched in collective anticipation. The four-persons stood, shaking slightly as they spoke the words everyone had been waiting for. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty on all counts. A wave of relief surged through the room, a shimmering glimmer attempting to pierce the shadows. But alongside it came the agonizing weight of grief, the aftermath of lives forever stained by law. The applause from the gathered crowd felt bittersweet. Accountability had been served, but it could not erase the pain that echoed in the hearts of Sarah's family as the gavel struck down, sealing Hargrove's fate. Detective Harper watched the Brown family embrace, tears mingling with traces of relief. Justice might have found its way through the labyrinth of tragedy, but closure remained an elusive specter, haunting them as scores were settled not just in the courthouse, but within each soul touched by the disappearance of a single innocent girl. The aftermath. Eldridge Hollow struggled to restore a sense of normalcy in the months following the trial. While the gavel had struck a final note on Daniel Hargrove's fate, the echoes of sorrow lingered in the streets, blending with the changing seasons. Autumn's vibrant colors had dulled, mirroring the somber spirits of residents still reeling from the loss of Sarah Brown. Margaret and Tom had moved through their days like shadows, combating a world that felt irreparably old. Each sunrise came with a fresh wave of anguish, reminder that Sarah wouldn't skip down the street, laughing, or race to her friends' houses, full of life and promise. No longer could they witness the sun streaming through their windows with the warmth of joy. It was a cruel reminder of what had been shattered. Local schools held vigils in honor of Sarah, small flickers of light in the oppressive darkness. Children released balloons adorned in pink, a cascade of color that danced against the overcast sky. Yet none could dispel the thick burden that hung like a weight upon their heart. Detective Harper attended the first vigil, standing on the outskirts, allowing the communal mourning to envelop her like a protective shroud. She had fought hard for justice, yet the emptiness nestled deep within her chest felt heavy, relentless. As days wore on, the struggle for the Brown family intensified, with the warmth of familial support often giving way to the bitterness of isolation. Margaret retreated inward, battling guilt and grief in silence. Tom tended to the garden they used to tend together, each flower representing moments harvested. Now they struggled amidst neglect, reflecting the two souls who had lost their way. One particularly rainy afternoon, Margaret found herself standing at Sarah's grave, nestled beneath a canopy of newly planted flowers, a mix of wildflowers that swayed gently in the breeze. As tears fell freely, she whispered promises to her daughter, urging her to forgive and to fly free. The words of the grieving parent hung in the air, mingling with the raindrops that fell, a cathartic release against the weight of helpless despair. The question loomed large in Harper's mind as she walked away from the gravesite. How does a community heal when torn apart by evil? The scars left behind would never fade completely, but within the cracks lay the potential for resilience. Detective Harper resolved to reach out, hold workshops, invite parents to share stories, encourage conversations about safety and vigilance. There was strength in unity, she believed, and perhaps like the wildflowers, they would grow again, reaching toward the light while honoring the memory of a lost child. Yet as winter approached, that resilience would be tested. The shadows of Hargrove's actions still lingered, when the town grappled with the sustained anguish left in his wake. Healing was not linear. It ebbed and flowed like the seasons, carving new paths around the memories that would remain. An unyielding reminder of both the fragility of life and the bonds that could either break or strengthen in the face of heartbreak. In the depths of winter, Eldridge Hollow would either choose to gather warmth from the embers of their shared past, or let the cold distance replace love with despair. It was a choice that would shape their identity, one moment at a time, forever intertwined with the memory of a beautiful girl who loved to explore. Reflection. Spring meandered into Eldridge Hollow, with its soft blooms and the gentle hum of life stirring back to the surface. Detective Harper found herself reflecting on the events that had forever scarred her community. The neon colors of blossom spilled onto the streets, but the deeper hues of loss and sorrow loomed just beneath the surface, vivid and haunting. The open wounds of Sarah Brown's disappearance lingered, and the shadows of guilt and grief still loomed large in the hearts of the townspeople. Harper stood at the threshold of the forest, peering into its depths with a profound sense of the past etched into every last branch and leaf. Its beauty was undeniable, but it had become a double-edged sword and emblem of cherished memories, intertwined with loss. She understood how a simple space for play and adventure could twist into something sinister overnight. Within the walls of her office, she began to pen her reflections. The search for Sarah, the trial, the raw emotions tethered to the stories that needed to be shared so that no child, no family would have to endure this again in silence. As she took a deep breath and placed pen to paper, she envisioned a narrative reborn from the ashes of grief, a testament to the resilience forged through hardship and communal spirit. Every detail mattered. She could feel the ripple effect of their experience, like a stone cast into a placid pond. It was vital that people understood the collective journey they had undertaken. Loss, anger, despair, but ultimately a drive toward healing and protection for the children left in their care. As stirrings of hope began to blossom once more, Harper vowed to ensure that Eldridge Hollow would not be just a place associated with tragedy, but a symbol of strength forged in love and resilience, one step, one story at a time. The road ahead would be challenging, and wounds would take time to heal, but in reflection, she found purpose. It was a vow not only to Sarah, but to every child. Every parent their stories deserve to echo, celebrated and safeguarded, reminding the world of both fragility and fortitude.